Hey guys, how's it going? Homework! Were you guys like, yes, homework! So how many of you did the first part? So there was 3 parts, right? So you got it working, it was good, everybody was happy. Okay, good. How about how many of you just tried? Just give it your good attempt, tried. It didn't work, that's fine, you tried it. That's good, all right. And then, were there anybody who got it all the way to part C, like they did everything? Everything was just like working.
Webdriver waits. That's the only thing. Yesterday I sent you an email. That's the
Yeah. So let's go over it. I was actually doing homework with you guys because we're doing this class first time, so I get to do all your homework as well. So I'm still assuming that you guys do not know how to use Webdriver Wait because that's what we're going to be learning today. So I did everything using Sleep. So this is basically what your homework ended up looking like. The first part you already know. We are essentially logging in, right? Now what I did that was funky maybe for you is I moved driver.get to the setup. And I mean technically it's probably a good idea to move login also into the setup. Because if you add more tests into this test case file, you probably want still all of them to log in. So it makes no sense for each one of them to log in again. So, or rather, log in independently. Repeat the code. So if I was going to add more tests here, I would also move the entire login bit up there. But because today we're also going to be talking about creating functions out of common code, right, such as login, I didn't go that far because we're going to first combine it into a function and then just the function that's going to go into the setup. If that makes any sense. If it doesn't, then you'll see in probably half an hour. So it's going to be no big deal. Okay. I actually put a comment up here to make sure you guys can kind of correlate between what was in the homework and what's happening. So yeah, there we go. We are going to log in and then after that we click PIM. So that is happening over here. And then after that, it's probably a good idea to do a little bit of wait. Now, we did talk about the difference between implicit wait and explicit wait last week. Do you guys remember the difference between implicit wait and explicit wait? Well, first of all, what is implicit wait? Let's start from that. It's something that we set right over here. All right, so I have it right here. So what does it do? Is it necessary? What does it do? So implicit wait or rather suppresses a failure when your actions, your WebDriver actions, cause the page to load or reload, right? So for example, if you click a button and that takes you to a completely different page, right? That causes a new page to load, right? If you click refresh or you cause a refresh, that causes the page to reload, right? But the operative word here is page, not a little element on the page, not like a table or like a form on the page, a bigger element on the page, but the page, the whole document has to reload or refresh or load the first time. This pretty much means that for any kind of other situation where your actions are causing something to change on the page, but the whole page does not reload, implicit wait is useless. It's not going to help you at all. So that's basically the difference. If you ever need to wait for something that is not causing the page to reload, right, then you need explicit wait. All right? So technically, there's this whole group of people and there's a whole following that says that you really actually don't even need an implicit wait. All right? Because technically, you can always just do explicit wait. So even if you click on a button that causes a whole new page to reload, you can explicitly wait for something on that page, right? And then interact with it. Does that make sense? So implicit wait is kind of redundant in that case. Making sense? So let's actually do an example. So for example, when I come here, right, I'm on the dashboard. Oops, excuse me. All right, I come here, I'm on the dashboard, and then when I click on PIM, right, page reloads. So far so good? But if the next thing I want to interact with is, for example, this field, I can either set implicit wait for, I don't know, 5 seconds, right? So that my page has time to load, right? And then I interact with that field. Or I can set implicit wait to 0. I can say, I don't care. Loads page, not loads page, I don't care. And instead, wait for the next thing I'm going to interact with. So I would just explicitly wait for this field to become present and to become visible. That make sense? Yeah? All right. So in this case, for homework, we didn't really know what to wait for or how to wait for it. So we're just using sleep. But as you can see, I added little to-do. They're little flags. So that later I can replace these sleeps with explicit wait, because you guys all know how I feel about sleep. Especially sleep for more than 1 second, right? So sleep for 1 second, okay, whatever. But sleep for more than 1 second, definitely want to replace it with something more robust or more smart. Okay, so far so good? So here we're clicking on PIM, and unfortunately, even though this would use implicit wait to wait for everything to load, that field doesn't really become interactable immediately. So it loads, but it doesn't actually become editable immediately. So I gave it an extra second, kind of give it a little bit more time. So that's what's happening here. And then this is probably the next issue that you guys ran into when you were trying to do the homework. All right, so when you get to that page, right here, let me go away and come back. All right, do you see what's happening here? There's already stuff in there.
But it works without clear.
It doesn't for me.
If you click it,
Yes, so, exactly. So then you had to figure out how to work around it, right? But you couldn't just come to this page and say, oh, there's a field, let's send some keys into the field. Because what happened? For those of you who tried it, what happened? It actually, it concatenated it to the end. So if you set a breakpoint and you were actually debugging, right? If you were using that debugging feature we learned last week, and you looked at the field, you would have saw that it actually worked. Like the keys were being sent, but they were being concatenated to the hint, which was not doing anybody any favors. So after that, you had 2 ways that you could have done it. You could have clicked it and then sent keys into it, which is a perfectly fine way to do it. It's actually more of what a user would do. So it's a perfectly logical way to mimic it. Or you can call the clear command, which is what I did, and then send keys. Either way, I'm perfectly happy with whichever way you got it to work. If it's working for you, awesome. So that's what's happening here. That's why I have this clear command. But again, if you wanted to do click and you want to switch this to a click, then more power to you. And then, of course, after that, we're going to do the search, right? So we search. What happens when you click the search button? What happens? Does something change?
the color changes.
But in general, does something change on the page? The table changes, right? So does that mean we need to probably wait, right? So there you go, another sleep. Now, I don't really know if 2 seconds are really necessary. I kind of picked 2 and went with it. Maybe 1 is enough, but... All right. The last part of part A is to check that the first row of the results table contains an employee with last name Smith. That was pretty much to get you to practice creating locators. All right, that whole bit, because everything else was by ID, right? Easy peasy. But that bit was the one where you had to kind of stretch your mind a little bit and think about what we learned last week, so you can make a locator, so you can check the first, the name within the first row, right? So this is what mine looks like. If yours looks different, I'm perfectly happy with that. If you used CSS, great success. It was probably harder to do with CSS because we didn't really learn how to do fourth in CSS. But if you do know how to do that, then more power to you. For those of you who don't, it's actually called nth child. Nth child. And then you put in parentheses which one. let's say 3, for example, or 4, I don't know, whatever child you want. Alrighty, so that was part A. That was it. You guys were good to go. One more thing to call out, however. I don't know if you noticed, here I'm using assert equals, which is basically I am making an assumption that when I type in Smith, the names that is going to come back is going to be Smith. But if you play around with this, I picked a very specific test case, but if you play around with this and instead of spelling Smith, you put something like AL, right? And then you do a search. It doesn't have to be last name, right? It doesn't have to be last name. It could also be first name. You see how it's AL here, but no AL here at all? So I mean, I kind of made it much easier than it should have been. If you did this test case, or later on in class when you learn more and you want to practice, you can always expand your test case a little bit more by searching for something that is not Smith, but something like AL, and then checking that it's either in the field 1 or in the field 2. Does that make sense? So it's either in the first name or in the last name. And you won't be checking that it equals, right? Because here, this doesn't equal AL. It contains AL. Does that make sense? Or, so you basically would have to check that either this or that contains AL. How would you do that? Let's kind of use our logic and try to figure out, we don't know yet how to do it, but let's try to use the logic. How do you think you would be able to check that either the first name or the last name contains the search string? And try not to overcomplicate it. Try to think of a simpler way to do it. And all of you can. It's literally just like a logic thing.
Using contain with 2 operators or and.
Okay, can you think of an even simpler way? But yes, contains, good, but without the operators. Can you think of an even simpler way?
With contains?
You can still use contains. I'm not against contains. Contains is awesome.
Text too, yes.
Huh?
Text too. Text function.
Okay, but the key here is that you want to check that it's either in one or the other, or both, right? So you don't know. You don't want to say assert on the first field if it's not there. And you don't want to say assert on the second field if it's not there, right? That's why you were using the and ors, right? But can you remove those and make it simpler? Okay, but substring is the same as contains. What I'm saying is, all right, let's draw it out. We have a value that, we have an assertion that needs to check 2 fields, right? Because it's either this or this, we don't know, or maybe both, right? So we can't just say assert that this contains AL, because it might not. And we cannot ask it from here, because it might not, right? We don't want a failure. So how can we make sure that either this or both contain AL? Simpler way, without using
Star.
You still want to use contains. Contains is fine. All right.
/ star.
Okay, so that's definitely one of the ways you could. Well, no, because what would happen is you would get the first field. So if you're doing a locator that would match both fields, you won't get both fields. You'll just get the first one. So you're not even checking the second one.
How about assert true?
Huh?
Assert true.
Assert true what?
If that logic passes, maybe.
Well, that's what he was saying. Assert true, this step contains or that contains, right? But I'm saying don't use one of those. Don't use it. Make it simple. Make it even more simple.
But it could be simple. Simple as
Okay, let's do it
contains.
this way. Let's do it this way. How about you get text from this one, and then you get text from this one, and you just concatenate it into one string. And then you don't have to do ors. It will just become one full name. So instead of saying first name contains and last name contains, just say full name contains AL. Just make it into one name. That's what it is, right? And then you don't have to do any of the weird logic. It's just one string, right? How do we concatenate, you guys?
Dot unless.
Yeah, exactly. It's a plus. So get text plus contains done. I'm still coughing. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Back to our homework. So loop. What did everybody do for the loop, or what did those people who tried did for the loop?
right, but no.
So here's the easy part. We did learn that new loop, not the classical loop, but the new loop. Remember it? And this was perfect. Like this loop works perfectly for this situation. It's like they were thinking of Webdriver when they created it. Because essentially when you say driver find elements, it gives you back a list.
Can we use iterator?
Huh? Oh yeah, list is basically like an array but better. It's basically everything an array is, but so much better.
Oh, iterator function.
You could use an iterator function, but you really didn't need to.
Yeah.
Because in an iterator, the reason you would use an iterator function is because you have that wonderful has next feature, right? But if you're using the the new for loop, it kind of goes till the end anyway. Like you don't have to ask it whether you're at the end. It literally just automatically stops when you're at the end. So you're kind of it's simpler, I would think. I mean, definitely if you want to use iterator, that's cool too. That you're doing the same thing essentially if you're doing that. Okay, so on that note, all you had to do was find all of the things. So here I am finding. What am I finding, by the way? I'm finding exactly the same thing that I was using here to check test the first row, right? So it's just one step from part A to part B. I was using this locator to check just the first row, right? And then, this locator, right? And then I was using that same locator, but I was finding all of the instances of what? Of the fourth cell in that table, right? So I was finding, or rather not even the fourth cell, but the link inside the fourth cell inside that table, right? And then just using that new for loop, I was iterating through them one at a time. What is this? Is this a string? It's not a string, right? It's an element each time. Each time it's an element. So that was one more step you had to do. You had to say element.getText. But that wasn't really, a big scary thing. So if you understand the concept of here you found all the elements, then you understand that all you have to do to go from an element to a text is get text, right? So here you got the name, and then all you're doing is exactly the same assertion you did there. Now I did modify it. I did point out that this is not correct, right? So I did take it a little bit of a step further and said it should contain rather than equal, right? That's not really correct. I left it in there because it's most commonly probably what you guys would have done, but this is more correct. To say assert true and then to say name contains and then the expected string, right? All right, and then moving on, we have part C. Now part C looks like it's a little bit longer just because I didn't actually want to change the whole script from the top. So I actually did all of that stuff and then selected job and searched again, all right? So technically you could have just moved this part up there and then you didn't have to repeat this over here. But it is what it is. So I did give you a hint, right, where you can read the docs. You really should learn how to read API. It doesn't have to be, I'm not saying Java API, just API in general. Because at work, whenever your developers are creating new endpoints, they will do API documentation for them. If you go to Python, there will be Python API. If you go to Ruby, there will be Ruby API. There will always be API. You should learn how to read it. So hence, if you actually went this far and actually peeked at this thing, more power to you. You are awesome. You go here, it basically tells you how to use this thing. You say new select, just like you do, just like you say new Firefox driver, right? Everybody understands the concepts of new now, right? And it literally tells you that in order for this thing to be instantiated, you need to pass in a web element, and that web element has to be the select element. So that's what we're doing here. We're basically just, finding it and immediately feeding it into select, right? So finding and feeding. And then you can select by visible text, so QA manager. Now, if you didn't do it this way, if you did it the other way, where you just basically clicked on the select and then waited a couple of seconds and then clicked on the job title, QA manager, that's perfectly fine too. If it works for you, then hey, I'm not gonna judge. So click search, and then everything is pretty much the same in terms of a for loop. There was a little bit more of a modification you may have done. and that is instead of looking for just the link inside the fourth cell, I looked for all the rows. Can't see the entire locator, but I looked for rows because I didn't want to run two loops. I didn't want to run one loop to check the job titles and another to check names. I wanted to check inside each row at the same time the name and the job title. So I got the row instead of just the cell, right? I mean, that's logically, I think, not
For the loop,
surprising.
we need to use the string name and string.
What
Is
string?
it string name equal to?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're trying to check the name, right? And trying to check the job title, and those are strings. So
Oh, that's why we have.
yeah.
So you must need to use the string name, right? If the words are there.
Right. So what I'm doing is I'm finding all the rows, and then inside every row I look for the fourth cell link, and then for the fifth cell, and checking their text against my expected result. Yeah. Questions?
Did you upload this class?
Yeah.
No, not yet. I wanted to go over it, and I'm actually gonna do it right now. But even if I ever forget, it will always be as part of a zip at the end of the day. So anything I have in my project, which was what I'm doing, I zip up at the end of the lesson anyway and always upload. So you guys can always download it at the end, even if I forget. But I'm not gonna forget right now. I will upload it immediately.
Directory.
Huh?
To what directory?
Well, this is going to be under day 3 because it was assigned under day 3. So you have your homework, and then I'm going to create a folder right now with this solution. Oops, each bullet down. Oh, great. So, how's the weather? Yeah, just, I don't know, bear with me, guys.
We have a time, don't worry.
I hope I don't have to restart my computer. That will be really sad. Okay, we have liftoff. Okay, I was going to drop it into a separate folder, but since it's dying on me, I'll just drop it into day 3 right now, like right in, and then I'll create a backup folder next time. Okay, so it's going to be called exercise, and it's going to be inside. Yeah, I don't know why, it's really slow today. Okay, let's see. Sorry guys, it's just taking forever to copy. I don't know why. Well, we'll just let it do its thing for a while. Okay. Let's talk about Webdriver wait. Actually, you know what? For the sake of learning process, so this is Selenium Webdriver API. In all honesty, it looks very scary, but it's not. You can pretty much ignore this part, the packages, because all of the classes are listed here alphabetically, and you really don't need to know what's inside every single package. You'll probably be looking for a specific class definition. So this box, you can pretty much ignore. On the other hand, this thing, it looks like a lot, but you really don't need to memorize all of it. It's probably a good idea to skim through it once, just to kind of see what's there and what's available, just so you remember those things exist. But I wouldn't spend your time memorizing every single one of these classes. So what we're looking for right now is called Webdriver wait, and it's at the bottom. So there it is. You click on it, and that's how you read about it. So there you go, Webdriver wait. It has a constructor, as you can see, or rather it has several constructors. And the most common one you're ever going to, oh, hold on. What's a constructor? What's a constructor? No. Constructor. What does it sound like it does? It constructs things. So, constructor is a function, right? But it's a special function. How is it special?
Has a class name.
Exactly. And this is what gets called when you say new. Exactly. Perfect. All right. So, well, then we kind of talked about it during the first day of class, but we didn't really talk about it. In Java, you have Java has a concept of overloading. You guys remember me talking about it, right? That's when you have you have several functions with exactly the same name, but Java is able to differentiate between them. How? By arguments, right? So either by the number of or by the data type of the arguments, right? You guys remember that part? All right. So this is why when we look at constructors, right, we are able to have 3 different constructors. We can have infinite number of different constructors. Because as you can see, they have different amount and different types of data parameters, right? Arguments. Okay, so the one that you're going to be using the most commonly is the one right in the middle, right? And it takes 2 parameters. One of them is your driver, which you already have, right? You can't do anything in Webdriver without having your driver. And then you have your timeout in seconds, all right? So now we're talking about explicit wait, not implicit wait like before. Remember, so before we said driver.manage, implicitly waits, all that stuff, right? But this is explicit wait. We still have to specify our kind of default for this object, right, when we create it. It doesn't have to be 30 seconds. You can set it to 5 seconds. You can set it to 10 seconds. You can have multiple. You can have one that is 5 seconds, one that's a minute, and one that is, I don't know, like 3 minutes, right? So for those things where you're uploading an image, maybe you need 3 minutes, or you're creating something like a report, right? You press the button and generates a report and it takes 3 minutes, right? And you might have something that is, something quick, like refresh any page, right? You don't need more than 5 seconds, right? So you might have multiples. And the thing is, they're reusable. So once you create it, you can reuse them. You can have like 3 that you can alternate. But here's my question to you. Why can't I just use the 3-minute wait for all my waiting needs.
Wasted.
No, see, that's the thing. Explicit wait doesn't waste time. Explicit wait is awesome and so much better than sleep because it actually checks to see if the condition is true every 1/4 of a second. And if the condition becomes true, it doesn't continue waiting. So literally, if you set it to half an hour, and after the first 2 seconds it figures out that whatever it is you're waiting for is true, it will stop waiting. So it will not waste the rest of the half an hour, just those first 2 seconds. All right? So that's why explicit wait is awesome. And hence my question to you. Why then can't I just set my explicit wait to something, outrageously high and just use it all the time?
Because if something is not working, if something is not working, it will be forever.
Exactly, right. So if something is not there, we're optimists, right? We're like, yes, it works. But if something is not there, I don't want to spend 3 minutes until my test figures out it's not there, right? So different situations call for a different amount of time. Now, something like, element on the page, more than 5 seconds is probably already unreasonable. So you want to set it at 5 seconds. Even if the element does get to the page after 5 seconds, you're probably at that point where it's now a bad user experience. So it should still be considered a bug, right? It's just way too slow. That means the developers did something that slowed down basically the process that was delivering this content. And you probably should let them know anyway and be like, hey, you guys used to be, quick. Now it's more than 5 seconds. My test started failing all of a sudden, right? But for things that always take a long time, and it's kind of like built in, like it's everybody expects it to take a long time, right? Generating your report, right? Then set it high, leave it high. It's fine. Yes.
Just going back a little bit, what exactly is an API call?
So usually when people say API testing, when they talk about API testing, they're usually talking about no, so when folks use the phrase API testing or API call, they're usually talking about an HTTP request. That's kind of the most basic definition I can give, right? Now, the question becomes, what is an HTTP request, right? What does it look like? Where does it come from? Well, if you remember how to open developer tools, you guys, I'm just going to pop open Firebug here, but it's same with developer tools, right? Same thing. So if I go, for example, to any page and I press enter, wrong page. Here, let's do enter here. That's probably not the best example because they're all errors, but yeah.
What is the main difference between XPath when we use Chrome on MacBook? We need to put $sign and X when you use XPath.
No, XPath is XPath. I think you're talking about something about
in Chrome browser when you use MacBook.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, you mean to check your XPath?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It has nothing to do with Chrome. It can be any browser. We'll get to that, actually. Usually covered when we talk about JavaScript, but we can talk about it today. Not a problem. All right, this is a bad example. Let me try to open the same thing, but on this page. All right, so just give me a second. I don't want errors coming back. I actually want the things. And it's taking forever. Okay, everybody who's on Facebook, stop. Or I don't know, whatever you guys are doing. Come on.
Facebook is blocked.
All right, let's try something that's not blocked. Let's do Google. There we go. Okay. Let's do some kind of Googling. There we go. All right. These are requests, HTTP requests. All right. Now, they come in different flavors. The one you see that's most common here is GET, but there's also POST, there's also PUT, there's also DELETE, there is option and one more that's common. There's actually 7, but I only remember 6 for some reason at this point. The other one I think is head, but there's one more that I do not remember. But essentially, there's not that many, right? It's not like there's a zillion of them. You can more or less count them on 2 hands, probably on 1. You don't use 2 of them at all. I've never had to use head, and I've never had to use the other one. That's why I never remember it. I've only had to use 5, which is get, post, put, delete, and an options. So that's why I don't remember the other 2. Essentially, your developers write a whole bunch of source, right? We're all talking about web applications right now. Obviously, if it's a desktop application, there's a whole different can of worms, right? But your developers are going to write a whole bunch of code, and that sits on the server, right? And then they kind of make publicly available certain API endpoints, right? So certain functionality that you can call to. I guess that's what you would call it. And it's not like it's a function name. So if you're writing source code, right, on your computer, you're calling function names, right? But when you're making an API call, you're actually calling to a specific, you could say URL even, right? You're making a request to a specific URL. So if you look at these guys, if you look at them very closely, right? So it's essentially a URL. You guys see that? It's a URL. All of them are towards a specific URL. So there's a domain, and then there's a certain amount of /something, /something, /something. And then at the end, you might actually even see a question mark. I don't know if I can find one for you right now. You probably have seen it. Oh, there we go. Right? You can see a question mark. And that's because this part is the actual API endpoint. But things after the question mark, separated by ampersand, right, and are actually parameters. So this is essentially what you're searching for, things that you searched. Make sense? So when I'm talking about an API or call, I'm talking about this. This is an API call. This is my browser making an API call towards some endpoint somewhere, right? In this case, Google endpoint. When I'm talking about API testing, I'm talking about writing tests that make HTTP requests towards these API calls. So essentially, the same thing the browser is doing, but through Java. That's what I'm talking about.
Really?
All right.
Do we need to use URL encode for send API requests?
If you're going to be using parameters, yes, definitely.
Is
If you're
URL
going to
encode,
be,
yeah?
there's. Depends on which library you use. Some of them will automatically encode it for you.
With post request.
Huh?
With post requests.
Oh, with post request, you're actually going to be using a body most likely, something like either XML or JSON. So yeah, you'll definitely have to be doing all kinds of encoding and
URL.
structuring. Not the URL. Well,
Sometimes they accept encoding the URL.
if you are going to be sending parameters with your URL, then you might have to encode it. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It just depends. With a get, then.
With post.
With post, maybe, but I can't think of a reason. In all honesty, I'm not like the guru on this. So I only know the things I actually have done at work, and I've never had to encode the URL for a post. But it doesn't mean that it's never. I just don't know. I don't know. Yes. How did I get this? Oh, yeah. So let's do this through the developer tools. It's gonna be easier. You guys remember how to pop open developer tools? Developer, and then it doesn't really matter which one you get, but it's the network one that you want. All right. Essentially, it still opens up the entire thing, so it doesn't matter. But you want the network tab, and then you just do something. Like literally, you just do things, and it will sniff the traffic. For those of you who were around a long time ago, probably you're familiar with like Wireshark, but now you don't actually even need a Wireshark. It's all built in here into Firefox, and you can actually even configure your Firefox to dump all of this network activity into a log. So you really don't need.
Fiddler.
Huh?
Or you can use Fiddler.
Oh yeah, like there's a million tools now. But I know that one of my previous companies that I worked for, they actually wanted me to log network traffic while I was doing Selenium testing, because they actually wanted to make sure certain APIs were being fired, or certain API requests were being fired by JavaScript. So they actually wanted me to log it, and it's perfectly easy to do with Firefox now. It's actually a setting that you can do.
Ellie, we don't know a little bit about the endpoint for screenshots of
The truth is that it's kind of something we usually talk about in the advanced class. We actually like literally write tests for API endpoints. So I don't know if I should be spending time in this class really talking about it. But yeah, if you take advanced class, then you'll pretty much be forced to do it, so you won't have a choice. Yeah, so if you want to look at the traffic, this is how you do it. And then you can press enter, and more stuff will come up. By the way, 200 is good. Anything 200 is good. 204 is good. But 300s are questionable. Usually they mean redirects. And 400 is bad. 500 is really, really bad. Well, depends on how you look at it.
100.
I don't know about 100. So 500 means actually something happened to the server, which is bad. 400 usually means that some kind of error in the code, so it's something that hasn't been handled properly by software. So it really just depends on how you look at it. What's worse? Like, oh, the whole thing crashed. Our code threw up. So, you know, you decide. Okay. What were we talking about? Yes, Webdriver wait.
Oh, that's fine.
Where is my Webdriver wait?
Down.
All right, so one more time. How do we create a WebDriver wait? We say new, and then WebDriver wait, and we pass in driver, and then how many seconds we want to wait as part of this instance of WebDriver wait, right? This object. If you want a different one, you create it again with a different value, and you use it. All right. Now, once you have it, you keep hold of that instance, right? You don't, I mean, unless you're going to be using it only once, but if you're going to be using it several times, you keep hold to it, on it, right? Just like you hold the driver. How do we hold on to something? We stick it into, or we assign it into a variable, right? Now, the thing is, WebDriver is, it's an object. It's not a primitive. So, a variable is going to be pointing towards it, right? It's going to be pointing towards it. So, if you have one variable pointing towards it, and then you put it, you know, you send it through a function to something else, and it's not like you're creating multiples or storing multiple copies. You're just still pointing to it, all right? So don't worry if you have to, like, you know, send it for a ride. All right, so far so good. So after you've created it, you can call certain functions on it. And, I mean, really, there's not that many. Let's see, sorry, did I miss it? There we go, instance methods. There we go. So really, the only one you're actually going to be using is this one, right? Until. Once you create this wait, you're going to be saying dot until, because you want a WebDriver wait until something, right? Until. So let's click on until and read about it. There we go. Until. Now, there's a whole bunch of fancy schmancy stuff here, but essentially, the only one you really need to pay attention to is what are the parameters, right? Now again, I know I could just tell you this and you're going to be like, yay, awesome, but you probably will have to read API documentation at some point for something else, right? And I'm not going to be around. So let's try to figure out how to do it together, right? Everybody agrees? All right. So after you figure out which function you want to use, you click on it. There we go. We clicked on it, right? And then this is basically the bit you have to read. And here it tells you that it takes a parameter is true, right? And is true is of type expected condition, right? Expected condition. So far so good? So now you know what? What do you know now? You know now that besides WebDriver wait, you'll also need expected condition, right? That's what you just learned. And at this point, I usually scratch my head, and what do? I say, what is expected condition? And luckily for us, it's a link, right? So you don't need to go up and down and try to find where it is now. You click on it, it takes you directly there, and magic word, it's an interface, all right? So the cool thing about that is that you don't have to create an instance of it, all right? You can just use it directly. So you have your expected condition, and it has a whole bunch of other things that you can use, which are not listed here for some reason. Let's try it out, all right? Let's try it out. So, and then we'll come back. So let's go here, and I'm actually on login again. You guys remember login from last week? It's kind of the one we keep coming back to, right? All right, so that's where I am. I'm on login, and what I'm going to do right now is I am going to declare a WebDriver wait. All right, so I'm going to do it right on top, right over here. I'm going to say private, and then what do I put here? WebDriver wait. Now every separate word is capitalized. It is case sensitive, so just make sure you capitalize all the right letters. WebDriver wait, and then I'm just going to call it wait. I'm not creative, so I'm just going to call it wait. Now, as soon as I add that in, I get a red underline. Why? Right. If you hold your mouse over it, or if you click on the bulb, you'll have an option to import. All right? It's the first one. So just double click, import. You'll have a new import statement that gets added right over there. If for some reason it is not coming up, right? It's just not coming up, just manually add it. It's org OpenQA Selenium, right? Which is pretty much all of them. And then support UI WebDriver with. By the way, if it's not coming up and I'm not around to show you what it is, you can also find this out through the API, because over here it tells you what package is in, all right, on the very top. So if you're like, I know I need WebDriver wait, it's not coming up, what do I put for the import? This is what you put for the import, all right? So API, very important stuff, or API documentation. Alrighty, so we have our WebDriver wait. Let's keep going. Where do you think I should create an instance of it? Where should I instantialize it? I can do it as part of the test. But because I'm doing everything else as part of setup, see the driver I created here? I'm kind of, I don't know, I guess leaning towards creating as part of setup as well. Just because I'm one of those people who sees a pattern and tries to stay with the pattern. Because I usually kind of have a sense that if other people did it, they probably had a good reason. So I'm just going to follow along until I learn otherwise. All right? That's kind of like my logic. I usually trust that the people who did something probably did it with a reason. And I'll do it until I figure out maybe they had no idea what the heck they were doing, and then I'll change it. But until I'm proven that until they're proven wrong, I go with the flow. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go with the flow. But what do we need in order to create an instance of WebDriver wait? Which ones? Driver. So do we create an instance of WebDriver wait before we create an instance of a driver, or after we create an instance of a driver? After. Perfect. So you can't put it on the very top over here, right? No. You have to put it after this guy, right? It has to go after the driver. So here we go. Let's do wait equals new web driver wait, and there you go. So wait, did I read this wrong? I'm all the wrong places. Where's my constructor? I picked the wrong one, sorry. So you don't need this third one. I just clicked the wrong one. Now, why is it yelling at me? What did I do wrong? Well, let's put our mouse over it and find out. It cannot be resolved to a variable. What does that mean when Eclipse says cannot be resolved to a variable? What is this fancy speak? What does it mean? Eclipse says, I know it's very tiny, that's why I'm reading it to you. It says, time out in seconds cannot be resolved to a variable. What does that
The
mean?
variable, whatever is,
Yeah, we have
it's
to
not
put a number right here.
Huh?
value is
It
not
requires
assigned to the
long
variable.
time.
Right, it basically says, I don't know this variable. I have no idea what the heck this thing is. Alright? So that's why it's complaining. So just ignore its complaining until you actually know what you're going to put in there. What should we put in there?
A long time. So numbers, some type of number.
Yeah, some type of number. Pick a number.
3.
3, 7, 5. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go with 5. I like 5. It's right between 3 and 7. Sorry. All right. After that, semicolon. Don't forget. And we have our wonderful wait. Now let's go back to go down to our test. Right. So we have this to do over here. By the way,
Do we still need implicit wait? Do we still need implicit wait?
So again, implicit wait is useful when you go to a new page. So I would still leave it. Because if you take it away, then you'll have to add explicit wait every single time you go to a new page. All right? But I'm not saying you can't completely get rid of it. So if that's the way you want to go, then more power to you. To give you a little bit more context, when the new Gecko driver rolled out, not right now already, but like 4 or 5 months ago, they actually did not implement implicit wait, and we had to wait a few months until it was, because they were also under the impression that you really don't need it. You should just use explicit wait everywhere. So kind of keep that in mind and then make your own choice, I guess. Okay, let's keep going. By the way, let's say that I forgot. Ooh. Yes, I do want to save my changes. Let's say that I forgot. Where did I use all those sleeps, right? Did you notice how I didn't leave myself just a comment? I left myself a special to-do comment. Well, we actually have a special view for that. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Where is it? I think I accidentally closed it. Give me a second. Window, show view, tasks. There we go. All right, so I closed it, but if yours is also closed, you're gonna go to Windows, show view, tasks, and all the to-dos are right here. So if I remember that I left myself some to-dos, I can double click on them and ta-da! All right, now these are special comments. This doesn't work for any kind of comment. It only works for things that say to do. But what I like to do is, what I like to do when I use to do, I also like to leave my initials, because if you're working on a large project with a whole bunch of other devs and QEs, they'll probably be leaving to-dos for themselves as well. And you'll have hundreds. And it's just such a pain to read through them. So I usually set a filter, and I'll look for something that says to do, for example, EY, right? Or like ES, or whatever I use, right? And then I'll only have to look at mine. I don't have to look at 100 other people's to-dos. So do that. So there you go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this sleep over here. But before I replace the sleep, I need to figure out for myself, what am I waiting for? Am I just waiting? Or is there any specific thing that I'm waiting for? Am I just like, I'm tired, I'm just going to sit here for a second? Or am I really specifically waiting for an event to happen, something to change so that I can keep going? What's happening here? Now, let's read through this code again. What does this code do? It logs in and then it logs out. All right. So over here, I'm just doing this. Like, what am I waiting for? There's 2 sleeps here. 2 sleeps. So what is this like specific sleep? Like, why? Why? All right, you know what? This one's a little bit harder. Let's figure out this one first. What am I waiting for here?
in order to open the special type, otherwise it will not be seen on the, it will not be exist in HTML.
Right, so we're waiting for specific element to
The logout button to come show.
Display.
to blink at us?
The logout.
To
Link for Webdriver.
no, what are we waiting for? A specific element in the page is going to do what? Display. It's going to become visible, right? It's going to become visible. It wasn't visible, it's going to become visible. Okay, excellent. So keep that in mind. Everybody got it? Keep it in mind. All right, now, we're over here. We decided we're not going to do the first sleep. We're going to do the second sleep. So, over here, I'm going to say wait. And then, what do I do after that? Dot what? Until. I'm waiting until. And then, what goes in there? What goes in there? Expected conditions. Expected. I forgot how to spell it again. I think it's condition, right? Not conditions? Or is it conditions?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember. But let's go here. What am I doing? All right. I think I spelled it correctly, so that's fine. Expected conditions, dot, and then I have all these options. So can you guys do the same thing? Go ahead and type in wait until expected conditions, dot, and then just spend a little bit of time scrolling through this thing and let me know which one of these many options I should use in this specific scenario where I am waiting for what? What am I waiting for? I'm waiting for an element to become visible, right? Okay, go for it. Scroll through all of it. It's quite long. I don't know if there's a way to make it long on the screen, so you're going to have to do it on your computer.
Visibility off.
Selection state. Visibility of.
Clickable.
Visibility of element location.
Visibility of web element.
So there are multiple things you can do. You can do this one. You could do this one. I mean, not really this. It's kind of thick. So yeah, either this one or that one. Two of them. You can use it. I'm sorry. You can either use this or that. Now, in this case, the parameter is a web element, right? So that means you already found it. It's there. Remember how I showed you HTML and it's always there. It's just the style changes. So if you already found it and you just want it to become visible, you can pass it in, right? But if you haven't found it yet, if you actually want this function to find it and to wait for it to become visible, it's a twofer, right? Then you use this one. Right, we can use that one because we, what do you think? Do you want to use the first one or the second one? I mean, technically, you guys, we did find it already. So we could just copy this into there, or we can copy this bit into there. So it's up to you. Do you want to copy the bigger thing or the smaller thing? Let's copy the smaller thing. I like copying the smaller thing as well. I'm going to be honest with you. So visibility of element located, and then in here we copy that. All right? Now, do we need sleep now? Do we still need it? Nope. So this goes away. It goes bye-bye. Now here is the interesting thing. All right, let me reformat this a little bit so you guys can actually see. All right, here's the interesting thing. This guy, visibility of element located. Let's see if I can get the yellow box up. Do you guys see what it returns?
False true.
It actually returns. Well, no, sorry, this is the wrong.
Visibility of
There we go. Do you see what it returns? It returns a web element. Alright? So guess what? If wait that until succeeds, not fails. If it fails, it goes boom and stack trace. Alright? If it succeeds, it returns a web element. Why do you think I'm saying this? Why am I calling attention to that?
Try catch.
No. So what am I waiting for here? I'm waiting for link text logout, right?
Yeah.
And then what am I doing on the very next line?
Click it.
I am finding it again. And clicking it.
Click on this element itself.
Yeah, we can insert.
Because it is already found that element.
Right.
You can just
So
click on
if wait until already finds it and succeeds and returns it, why do we need to find it again? Right? It makes no sense. So what you actually can do is you can actually do this. You can delete this whole part and combine it into one statement. In fact, you could always just say wait until expected conditions, that send keys, that click. That, like, you don't even have to say driver find element ever. You could always do wait for this, wait for that. A little bit of an overkill, but you could. All right? It's perfectly fine. You could do this kind of situation where you wait for everything. All right? All right, so that's what we're going to do. Delete. The All right, this one's a little bit trickier. I still have to figure out what to wait for. So what I'm going to have you do is, I'll have you, well, you guys don't really have the homework solution yet, huh? Did it ever copy? Do you guys know?
Yes.
Really? It actually worked after like three hours? Yay! Okay. So, if you go to day 3 and then you right-click on this link, so right-click on it, you'll be able to save link as, right? And then you'll have my code. You'll have it. And I want you to spend a little bit of time and to fix my sleeves, right? Fix them for me. So that's your assignment for the next 20 minutes, all right? I'm gonna kind of do it in increments, so you'll do maybe 1 or 2, and then I'll show you how to do it, and you do the rest, okay? But I'm also gonna take this opportunity to go and get a cough drop. So, totally selfish reasons here. Please, especially these 2 sleeps over here, make sure you figure out what you're waiting for. Well, okay, how about this? I'll give you 5 minutes and then I'll give you a hint if you need one, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right? So go through this. You'll have to do the same thing we did on the login to do it here. I will actually put login up. You don't need to look at this code. You're going to download it, right? Right? So I'm just going to put login up so you guys can see what we did. There you go, right? And go for it. Maybe not 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. It feels like a lot for 20 minutes. So I'll be back with a cough drop. You guys, I thought it was going to misbehave for this one, but it really didn't. So it's actually pretty straightforward as well. Or at least for now it's working. I remember this misbehaving when I tried it before, and I had to do some fancy footwork. But it sounds like it's working right now. So if you just wait for the next thing you're trying to click, it should be fine. So this thing is the same as logout. You can just wait for it to become visible and then to click it. All right. This is still on login, so I know I did like quick change, but I think you guys can figure it out, right? So, seems to be working consistently. All right, I think I lost everybody, right? One more time. This is not the homework we just did. This is login that we were looking for before you started your exercise, right? We only did this bit, right? And I told you to not worry about the first sleep because it's a little bit icky. I just tried it again and it's working. So it's either the browser that I upgraded today but it's working. So if you just, remember this was find element by ID welcome.click. So the only thing I changed was instead of saying find element, I literally copied this entire bit up to by, pasted it, and it works. right? And then you can remove the sleep. Cool? All right, that's what I was gonna say. And then right now we're all working on homework day 3 sleeps, right? We're making all those weights instead of sleeps.
Just right click, right click, or you edit with notepad, and then just copy it. That's easy. Basically, it's in the same folder. When it's in the include folder, it just means the file is in a different folder. But I prefer to have backup myself, so it's better to do this. Okay, great. Just
Did everybody figure out how to download the file?
Control A.
Does anybody need help? Be honest. All right, how about I'm gonna do it anyway, all right? So you go here, you right click on it, you say save link as, all right? It immediately puts the name, so you don't need to do anything, all right? The only thing you need to do is figure out where to put it. So you need to open your project. So see, this is my project, and you need to go into the source folder, all right? Into the, well, sorry, that's actually the wrong one. Into the source folder of your project, which is somewhere. This one, right? Source folder. And then if you don't have a homework folder, don't worry about it. Just save it into your source, right? So for example, I'm gonna call this so that you can see. There you go. I saved it into my source, right? Right? Refresh so you can see it. Because if you save it from the outside, you need to refresh your project. Otherwise, it doesn't know that you saved it. It needs to reprocess everything, right? And once you open it, then you can click over here and say move to homework folder or remove the package declaration. Make sense? You decide what you want to do. So if you don't want to move it, you just do this. Ta-da! If you want to move it, then you click on this bulb and you say move, and it will move it for you. All right? It will create the folder and move it for you. Sounds good?
Ellie, you mind showing again how to move it from there? Because I did it and I don't see it.
Yeah, sure. So as soon as you say save link.
So guys, I have a privilege.
First time I met
Ellie, she was 11 years old. She was a little girl.
Okay, I wasn't that dull.
Kind of. You think so?
At 11. I was
was a tall kid. Yeah, my mom was in Michael's second year. So he opened the school, and then second year my mom was a student. And they were in the old buildings, and my dad worked, so there was a staircase, and they were on one side, the school was on one side, and there was another company, software company on the other side. My dad worked on the other side, so I would come here after school, hang out, and they would feed me candy. It was awesome. Okay, so save as, right? After that, you just find your source folder. Make sure you put it in the correct project, unlike what I tried to do last time, right? It's correct project. You go to your source folder. It has to be the source folder. And then you just click save. Now the problem is that once you click save, you go back to Eclipse, nothing there, right?
Yes.
And you panic. You don't panic. You click on the project, right? Right click, and there's this refresh, right? Now if you're on the Windows, you can just press F5. If you're on the Mac, it's a little more complex than that. So you refresh, and ta-da! Magic, it's there. Right? Now once it's there, it's red. And the reason it's red is because mine is inside the homework package. And you put yours inside source, which is not the homework package, right? What is source? It's the default package, right? It's default. It's basically like right under. So here you have to make a decision. Do you want this file to be inside a homework folder, or do you just want it to be under source? If you want it inside the homework folder, click on the little bulb and select move. If you don't want it to be in the homework folder, delete that whole line. Right? That's it. Easy peasy. What's the package, you guys? It's a folder. Hence why I'm saying if you want it to be in the homework folder, move it into a homework folder.
Create it first.
You don't have to create it.
Oh, you don't.
If you click on the bulb, it says move, it will create the folder for you. It's very helpful. It's a helpful bulb.
Did you learn anything at 11?
No, I definitely had other priorities. Why? I was actually around computers since I was like 4 or 5. So I helped out my parents when I was a little older, probably around 13, 14. I helped them out. Not at 11. At 11 I was just learning, but that was enough for me.
Is your mom still in this? Is your mom still in quality assurance?
No, she's retired. She's living the highlight. Okay, how are we doing? Shall we try one? Okay, well, let me help her and then we'll try one. Actually, if you let me grades move. You want to come to the board and try it? Okay, let's do this. So exciting. I'm gonna hype up myself on sugar, cough drops. Awesome. Alright, you guys, I'm gonna pretend that I have no idea what I'm doing, and you guys will teach me what to do, right? Right? Because you guys are all pros now. So, what should I do?
Driver. Oh,
What's the first thing I need to do?
you need to add the weight from Java.
Okay, so let's use correct vocabulary like it's an interview. What are we gonna do first?
Find the function.
I need to create WebDriver weight variable. All right. I need to declare a WebDriver weight variable, right? All right, good. Let's do that. Is it going to be public or private? Private WebDriver weight variable. Okay, we did that. I'll even import it because I'm a smart elephant. All right. What's next? What do I do next? I don't know. You tell me. What do I want? I don't know what I want. What do you want? Come on, we're using interview vocabulary. Come on, let's try to use correct vocabulary. None of this create that thing over there with that thingy thing. No, let's not do that. All right, so
Create an instance of Webdriver.
all right, okay. I heard the word I wanted to hear, right? So we want to create an instance, or rather instantiate, right? Where should I do it? Do I do it here? Do I do it here? Does it matter?
Before driver.
You have to do it at some point after you create driver, but does it matter if it's inside setup or inside the test? Does it matter? Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. So just to mess with you, to show you that it doesn't matter, I'm going to do it right here. All right? So
But if you're gonna create next test, yes.
exactly. If I'm going to create one more test, then it becomes something that matters. But for one test, does it matter? It doesn't matter. All right. Wait, and I'm going to say what? Webdriver, wait. And what goes here? Driver and pick a number. All right, we'll do 7 this time. Just to be awesome.
New keyword is missing.
Yes, thank you. I was like, what did I do? Thank you. You guys are good QAs. All right, let's keep going. My first victim, right over here. So, what am I waiting for?
The element to be clickable.
Well, I actually already clicked it. I'm waiting after I click it. So what am I waiting for? Nope, this is where I logged in. This is a completely different can of worms. What am I waiting here for?
Element to be displayed.
Yeah. So I'm essentially waiting for the next thing I'm going to interact with. That's usually what happens. Usually you're waiting for the next thing you're interacting with. The reason you figured out that you needed to wait there was you ran your test and it failed there. So you were like, oh, okay, then I must wait for it. So chances are the next thing you're interacting with is the thing that failed, the one you need to wait for. It's pretty self-explanatory, actually, if you think about it. So I'm actually going to copy this guy right over here. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm going to say wait dot until expected conditions, and hope I spelled it right. Dot. Now, should it become visible? Should it become present? What am I waiting for here? Does it need to become enabled or? So, truth is, I don't really know. I'm going to go with visible. If that doesn't help, I'll try something else. That's usually how I do it. No big magic. I try to make my best guess, and if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. And hopefully something will work at some point. Okay, so we can assume that this works. And when it works, what is it going to do?
Display an element.
It's going to display an element, or what is it going to do?
Locate.
It's going to locate an element and make sure that it's visible, right? And what's after that? Any other changes I need to make? Well, the keyword here is need to. I don't need to make any additional changes, but are there some other modifications I can make to the code to make it more, I don't know, efficient, I guess, maybe? I don't know if it's more efficient or not, but less repetitive. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do?
Take something out.
What do I take out? Come on, you guys. I know what I'm doing. You guys are the ones supposed to teach me. Come on.
Clear. Dot clear. Dot clear.
All right. So that's fine if I do that clear. But what about this guy? Guess what? It's the same element. Need to use a little bit of creativity here. Let's try to figure out how we can preserve the elements so that we can clear and send keys. Or if some of you did click and send keys.
What element?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's, instead of doing immediately dot click or dot clear, Let's actually save it. So we're gonna call it, what is this? This is emp name field. Now I'm kind of cheating here. Do you see how I declared a variable, but I didn't actually say what data type it is? Right? Well, that's because as soon as you do this, you'll get a little bulb, and then you can pick the create local variable option. It's the first one on top. I know it's very tiny. It's tiny on my computer as well, but it's the very top option. If you double click on it, it actually puts the data type for you. So you don't need to figure out what the data type has to be, and you don't have to make typos. It will just put everything for you, all right, without the typos. So here we go, right? That's what we're gonna do.
But it's still misspelled field, right?
Oh yes, sorry, that was my fast fingers. Thank you. So emp name field, and then after that, what I can do here is what? I can say, what's next? Oh, we don't need these two, right? So what's next? How do I then use this guy? How do I use it?
That dots and
All right, so I'm gonna say amp name field dot clear, and then amp name field dot send keys, right? Instead of these guys, right?
Ellie?
Yes.
Just a question, like in the first where you declare the emp field, at the end of that wait command only, can't you make it clear there? Will that not work? Because how we did the other way where we clicked that?
Right. So yes, you could definitely do that, but then how are you going to call send keys, right? You can't. Then you will still have to look for that element again to send the keys.
But anyways, the variable will be there with emp field, and next instead of calling the clear.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So
You're saying why can't I just do this?
Yes, at the end.
And save it at the same time?
Yeah, dot clear.
Unfortunately, what gets saved is the return from the last bit. And when you call clear, it doesn't return a web element. So if you actually point your mouse towards it and you wait a little bit, it says void. I don't know if you can see that from far away, but if you do it on your own computer,
Yeah.
the very first thing is void. That means you cannot save anything into the variable. There's just no return value. So you kind of have to play which one do you want more? Do you want to clear it immediately, or do you want to save the element and then clear? All right. So by the way, you guys, I know this is kind of we did this and for the sake of learning, but sometimes doing this is actually bad. All right. Sometimes finding an element and then performing multiple actions on it is actually bad. And the reason it's bad is if that element actually refreshes or changes in some significant way, your reference to it becomes stale, and you literally will get a stale reference exception. That's what it is, all right? And that means that you have to find it again in order to be able to use it. So sometimes this kind of situation where you look for the same element multiple times is actually better, because you are less likely to get a stale reference exception. Stale reference exception. All right, does it make sense? Did I lose everybody? Yes.
The editing field, when you declare it as a variable, the web element is automatically up there, or because mine says object, it doesn't say
If you did this part first and then put the equal sign in, it should say web element. But if you just if you declare this first, then it will say object. Like it's the order in which you have to do it. So you have to say wait dot until this whole bit. You have to do this whole bit all the way to the end, and then you have to say equals and put the name of the variable. Then when you click on it, it should give you an option to create local variable and say web element. If it doesn't work, then we can try it together. And if it still doesn't work, I'm sorry, your Eclipse is not behaving. It's happening.
Ali?
Yes.
To ask again, so what you said is what you do there is not good because of the stale exception?
No, I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying there are situations where it actually may not be the best way.
It's like sometimes it's the best way, like it's more efficient because you don't have to look for the same thing twice. Or I shouldn't say efficient, less redundant because you don't have to look for the same thing twice. But sometimes, if that element is being changed by JavaScript or by something, if it's still being loading, changing, then if you find it once and then try to do multiple actions with it, like clear, send keys, the clear might still work, but then it will change and you will lose the pointer towards it essentially, and then you'll get an exception. Why am I saying this? If we run this test right now and some of you get stale reference element, you'll have to revert back and you have to look for it twice. Mwahaha, sorry. What was I gonna say? I forgot.
I have a question. How come the first part, right after you click on button login, you don't need to wait for the next element to appear? How come?
Very awesome question, and the answer is implicitly. Did you guys hear that? The question was, how come after I click on the login button, I don't have to wait for this guy to click on it?
Why would you wait?
Why? Oh, I mean, the whole page goes kapoof, and the whole new thing starts loading. Why don't I have to wait? That definitely takes some time, especially in this classroom. That whole login might take forever. So why don't I have to wait?
We're not putting any input there.
It's a refreshing of the page, so implicit wait that.
Yes. Remember? Remember? Implicit wait on the very top of the page inside setup that we declared? That is why we don't have to wait. Now if we set it to 0, then we have to wait. It will not work. Actually, I don't remember if that's correct information or not. We might have to set it to -1. I think if you set it to 0, it's actually infinite. So read the docs for implicit wait, because I'm pretty sure for some libraries. So the thing is, okay, sorry. Whenever I say something, I have to give the background information. Otherwise, I'm giving you false information. Even though Webdriver interface is kind of a rule, right? Different libraries still kind of have little different tweaks about how they implement it. So I know for certain that in certain implementations of Webdriver interface, if you set implicit wait to 0, it actually means like infinite implicit wait. Does that make sense? And in order to actually set it to nothing, you have to set it to -1. I cannot guarantee this about Java. I really don't know. With Java, I've never actually tried to turn it off. I always have it set for like 5 or something for implicit wait. So I don't know, read the docs, but it might not be 0 to turn it off. It might be -1, but I don't know. Okay? On that note, let's keep going. Yay, 1 down, and then how many left to go? So what are we waiting for here? We click, and then things happen. So what are we waiting for here?
Able to be visible.
Well, that's the problem, right? So the problem is that when we come over here to PIM, this is going to time out on me. Oh, come on. All right, when we come over here to PIM, there's already a table. Yeah? Already a table. And that table already has results in it. So we can't kind of like say, oh, let's wait for the 4th cell. Well, because it's already there. And that means you're not really waiting for anything if it's already there. So we have to use our logic and figure out what to wait for. So let's do this. Let's type in employee name, like we did in our test. Click search. And try to figure out what can we wait for. Is there anything we can wait for?
Changing the data of the
Okay, so this is not common. I don't expect you guys to figure this out. That's why we're doing it together in class.
when I told you can do it independently, what the most I was expecting is for you to copy the line below and do it, right? This is why we're doing it together. And it's almost break time. So 5 minutes and you get to go to break. The reason we're doing this together is I can point out that sometimes the thing you're waiting for has to be a little more creative than just the next thing you're going to interact with, right? And this is one of those situations. The table is already there. You're waiting for it to refresh and get new results, but you can't wait for the results because you don't know if it's the old results or the new ones, all right? So you have to look at the entire page and figure out something else. And here's what we're going to figure out. Look, I'm going to compare this field and this field, all right? So let's look at this ID field over here. When I enter stuff into it, you see? Nothing happens. You see? Value doesn't get updated. Now once I click search, that value goes all the way to the application server and then comes back and actually becomes part of the HTML. Just like it did here. Alright? So even though it's actually the table that we want, as far as I can tell, the only thing that's actually changes on this page is this guy. So we can actually wait for this field to have value Smith and then try to make sure, like, we check the table after that, right? That's the only thing I can think of. However, sometimes there are situations where there's nothing even like that. Like, it's just, there's nothing to wait for. And in that case, what do? You sleep. There's no fancy schmancy around it. You just sleep. You just try to pick a small enough number so it's not obnoxious, and you sleep. That's all. I don't have a better answer for you.
Can you check the change of value?
Which value?
For example, Smith.
Well, this is that's okay. I think what you're saying is we can wait for this thing to become Smith,
Yeah.
right? What if the first value was already Smith?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I can't guarantee that it wasn't. Like, I just don't know. I mean, I can think of other things to do. For example, oh, come on. For example, when you load this, there's pagination, but when you do a search, there's no pagination. But again, what if, okay, bear with me. What if there's 51 Smiths? Then there will still be pagination. Like, sometimes there are situations where there's just really no workaround. The only way is just sleep. You just sleep. Or you can talk to your devs and have them do something whenever the results are published. Just have them add a little element somewhere, hidden something that you don't, it doesn't even have to be visible. It can be hidden. But that you can wait for to know that the results have loaded. Okay. After we come back, we'll create a locator for the Smith thing in the box, and we'll keep going. But for now, go ahead and take a break until 9:50. Okay, so somebody asked me a question earlier, and I promised I would respond, so this is going to be the time where I respond. In developer tools inside the console, so again, I'm using Firebug, but if you go to developer tools and you open web console, same thing, right? Console, see there's a little place to put your information, or Firebug console, place to put your information. You can check your CSS in your XPath, all right? So like you created a CSS path and you want to check it, or you have an XPath and you want to check it. So if you want to check your CSS path, it's a lot easier. Why? Because you can actually, from the HTML tab, directly enter it into the search field. See, it says search by text or CSS selected. You guys see that? If I use Developer Tools Inspector, same thing. You can use this field over here to look for, sorry, trying to show you, but I'm messing up. See, you can look for CSS. You guys see that? And it immediately found it inside HTML for me. You guys see in the bottom? So checking your CSS is easy. That's what I'm trying to say. However, you cannot enter XPath inside here. See? No, not so much. So if you want to check your XPath, you can do it from console. And this doesn't mean it has to happen in Firefox. It's the same for Google Chrome, same for Opera, it's the same for pretty much anything. The function is pretty simple. You put $X and then parentheses. It's a function, $X function. All right, it's a JavaScript function. And all you do is in double quotes, you put your XPath. And it will give you back a list of all the finds. Does that make sense? Now, you can also do the same thing from command line for CSS. It's just, you already have a nice field, so you don't need to switch back and forth, right? So why bother? But if you wanted to check your CSS path from command line, you could do that. It's just a little bit more involved. You say document dot query selector. You guys see that? Query selector. And then same thing. In quotes, you can just put whatever you're looking for, and you'll get it. Make sense? So.
But you using here JavaScript syntax?
Yeah, this is all JavaScript. $X is also JavaScript. So.
The document is too.
And document is too. Right. So in JavaScript, essentially, you have two starting objects, document and window. So you can do things like window dot open.
It's about browsing.
Yeah, and that will open the window. Or you can do window dot close, or you can do window dot size, whatever. The truth is that in your driver, whenever you say driver.get, and it pops up, no, whenever you say new driver, I guess. Whenever you say new driver, it actually calls window.open, and that's why it pops open. Like that's part of the setup. And then when you say .get, it actually calls window. Is it window.get? I forgot what it is. Sorry, forgot the JavaScript word right now. But basically, Webdriver is just kind of a fancy front end for JavaScript. So that's what's happening. I used to, a long time ago, when we taught Java before using Selenium ID and all that stuff, I used to actually teach DOM to you guys, like how to use DOM. I don't know if I want to spend a whole bunch of time teaching you how to do it right now. I'll quickly show you right now on the board so you guys can see how it works, all right? So you know what DOM is, but it's basically DOM because it starts with document. DOM stands for document. So it's going to be document dot, and then you actually have 3 functions that you can use. There's get element by ID, get elements by name, and then get elements by tag name. And most recently, they added get elements by class name. There used to be none. There used to be only 3. Now there's actually 4. I have no idea what get elements by tag name NS is. I have no idea. If you know, please tell me because I have no idea. But the other ones are pretty self-explanatory. So for example, if you want to find something by ID, it's the same as if you were doing it using Java, right? You just put your ID in here and it will find your element for you. For example,
that element will be only
see?
only
Ta-da! Huh?
whatever you look there is only in the current page or
Yeah,
the
so
complete website.
no, that's why you're using the keyword document. So document literally means current document. So whatever you're looking at right now.
Oh, okay.
Not only that, but here, let me show you an example of something. We usually talk about this later in the course. The fact that I'm showing it right now doesn't really mean anything, but we will cover it later as well. You see this thing?
Yeah.
You guys see that? So that's actually its own little document. And how do I know this? Let's see if I can find it. Don't refresh. Yeah. Sorry, I need to grab it, and it's not letting me grab it. Question for you. How many HTML tags can one document have? It's okay, it's not a trick question. How many HTML tags can one document have? One, opening and closing, they're considered one. Yes. All right, so can you explain this to me? Ah, shoot, it refreshed again. Okay, one more time. All right. You see this HTML tag?
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
Where is it
dun.
at?
Dun, 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 dun. One more.
It's from, sorry.
Dun, 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 dun. It's black magic. So this is why I specifically stress the word document. Here, what you're actually looking at is a document within a document. The most basic way to picture it in your head is the same as you sitting at home and watching television in Paris, all right? Paris is not inside your house, all right? All right? You're seeing it, you're seeing another document through a television set. Does that make sense? All right? So the television set in HTML speak is called a frame, all right? And you can display pretty much anything you want through a frame. So you actually are looking at one document, and then through a frame, you are seeing another document being served up to you, all right? That's why when you say in the console document dot, you're still talking about the parent. You're still talking about the major container. And if you want to look inside the document that's inside the television set, you have to first select
As a frame.
the frame. Make sense? So you basically first have to say, we're not looking in the room, we're looking inside the television. All right? Make sense? Sorry, my friend's here. Okay. On that note, back to console. So if you wanted to check that a specific XPath works, you just do $X round brackets and you put your XPath there. If you want to check CSS, you have multiple options. You can do through the search field inside HTML tab. You can do through JavaScript, where you do document.query selector. There's one more that I'm forgetting right now. But yeah, it is what it is. Sorry to open Yahoo, but it's the only one I can rely on always to have a frame inside a frame, so I always use it. Okay. Shall we try to create that that weight that we talked about before the break? So what we want is we want to wait for this. Oh, okay. Doesn't like me. All right. Back to PIM. I don't want to look for Bob Smith. I just want Smith. All right. So what we wanted to look for is this guy. And if we look at it very closely, it has value attribute Smith, right? So can you all help me create a locator that will use this portion, value Smith? Can you help me?
By XPath or by CSS?
It doesn't really matter, actually. You pick one. Let's do CSS. Let's do CSS. All right, let's do CSS. So what is it going to look like?
Check it, show it is again.
Yes, I will.
Input.
Right here.
Then hash.
Uh-huh.
And the name of the
Hash, that did, but thing, all right, hash, and then what? So let's start that out. I agree. Let's do that. And then?
No, input before. We have something.
Okay, sure. We can do input. All right.
That's enough.
And then?
Dot value?
That value?
No?
I'm not going to say yes or no. Like this?
No.
Yes, no, yes. All right, people are saying no. People are saying,
Put before.
all right, not that value. Okay, what do I do? It was only a week ago, people. Come on. You have notes. Look back. Come on, what do we do? What's the rule?
The square bracket value and
Square brackets. All right, and then value, and then what?
equal to Smith.
Equals to Smith. Now, as confident as I am, I still like to check my stuff. So let's go here and let's check it, right? We're gonna put it right over here, press enter. Yes, I found it? Yeah, and there's 1 of 1. Now here is the ultimate test. If you do the set, and you wait for it, and you look for it again, does it find it? All right, so that's good. That means that it's definitely not there until it is, right? So we can wait for it. Okie dokie. So here's our CSS. We checked it. It works. I'm going to say wait dot until, and then over here I'm going to put expected conditions dot, and here is where we stop. What am I waiting for? Be careful. This one is a little bit of a trick. What do I wait for? Am I waiting for an attribute, an alert, an element,
Maybe some
a frame,
Attribute.
invisibility, presence, text, URL, visibility? What am I waiting for?
Text to be present.
Well, unfortunately, it's not text. It's actually a value, right? Text is when it's between tags. You guys remember we talked about this two weeks ago? Between tags is text, but when it's value equals, it is an attribute value, right? Definitely not text. But more importantly, we have this nice little CSS that we just created. How do we use it? Do I wait for visibility? Do I wait for visibility, you guys? We're back to that whole issue of when do we wait for something to be
You
visible,
can wait for it.
and when do we wait for something to just be there?
To attribute.
Presence or visibility? Why not visibility? Why not visibility?
Doesn't exist.
You know why not visibility? That's why. If it was there and just not visible, we would still be able to find it. You see what I mean? Just the style would be what? Display none, right? Or hidden, however they decide to hide it. There's 2 ways to hide something. But this one, no, it's just not there. So what will happen if you decide to use wait for visible or visibility of element? What do you think is going to happen?
It's not going to
Use your logic.
It's not going to return
Forever.
true. So it will be
Because there is no speed.
waiting.
What is it going to throw?
It will stuck.
Will it throw timeout?
State.
It won't throw stale, but you're right, it won't throw timeout. What will it throw?
Exception.
What kind? Yes, it's going to definitely throw an exception. What kind of exception?
No such a.
No such element exception. Exactly. That's what it's going to throw. Because in order to check that something is visible or not visible, it will try to find it first. It won't be able to find it. It will not suppress an exception because it expects to find it. Wait for visibility of element assumes that the element already exists. All right? It's not like, oh, let's see if it exists and then wait for it to be visible. No. It's, I expect it to be present. I expect it to be in existence. And then I'll see if it changes state. That makes sense? That's what visibility is. So if you want for something that's not there to be there, or to wait for it to be there, presence of element. You see what I mean? Yeah?
If it still doesn't make sense, try to wait for visibility of this locator and see what happens. It will definitely, it will be very there. You'll know what I mean. Okay, let's do this. Presence of element located by, what are we looking by? CSS selector. There. All right. Groovy? I think so. Now the question is, will this be enough, or will we just have to sleep, right? That's the main issue here. So we shall see. I don't know. I am trying it first time, just like you guys are. And something went boom.
Yeah, same here.
So what went boom? So I guess that doesn't work. I wonder why. That's a little weird. More importantly, I didn't actually see it enter
It
any
doesn't
text.
click by search. Maybe we need to see before the search.
What I'm
click.
seeing is that I type in Smith and it clears Smith for me. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, me too.
It doesn't enter, it doesn't, it's not that this locator doesn't work, it's the previous one, right? I'm not seeing a search. All right, let me see, let me watch what's happening here.
Smith was not entered.
Okay, so unfortunately,
Scientist.
I don't see it entering a search. More importantly, I see something else. Did you guys see something else? You see that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't tell what.
Loading?
It's
Yeah. So the field still loads.
We need to wait.
So here is the question we need to play now, right? How do we make sure that it is actually all loaded?
We can wait. Just
We didn't wait long enough. Huh? We waited and we typed and
Well, that's that's really the problem though, right? It's not that we waited not long enough, it's that our code is waiting for something that refreshes afterwards again,
Oh.
right? So we need to make sure that we wait until the second refresh is over. And I don't have a simple answer for you. I mean, I have an answer, I just don't know how to implement it yet. Somehow we have to figure out locator of that loading thing. But I'm not that fast, so usually if I'm doing this at work, I'll ask the devs what the locator for that load thing is. But the only thing I can do now is try to catch it. And this time around, see, it's a lot faster, so I don't have. No, I'm not fast enough. Nope, I'm not fast enough.
it's impossible.
Yeah, it's almost impossible.
Really, why we need to catch the loading? We can assert this type for hints, for example, for value.
We can try. The problem is that I have a feeling that it loads it and then reloads it again. That's what I'm afraid of. Yeah, do you see it? Look, you can see it immediately. There's something there and then it reloads again.
Oh.
You know what, you guys? I'll ponder about this for a little bit.
let's
try maybe we need to try to get
Can we,
text.
can we wait for the name in the element list? It's probably loading the element list, right?
If something changes and keys not working, new version or something.
Okay, let me just try something for a second. I'm not gonna try to fix it with you guys here. I'll probably just go home and try to fix it myself, but I also wanna see if this guy works. So let me try to see if that one works first. At this point, it's more interesting to me if that other one works. I am so slow. Well, that's just a little weird.
Wow. Sweet.
Well, I consider that weird.
We can't actually go to feedback with the car.
Yeah, something's wrong, you guys. I really don't know what's going on. But that didn't look like good execution to me.
I think it's overcomplicated.
It should be fine. It's something with this loading. See, something is wrong. Something is... Shouldn't load half the page all weird. That's not... What is this?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I don't even know what this is.
We cannot even go this meet to team page. Yeah, it's not clicking for us.
No such
Replicate.
All right. Let's move on to something else, and then we'll come back and try to fix it. It should, in theory, all work, but I don't know why it's not. So let's switch gears, and we'll come back to it in maybe half an hour and see if it works again. So here's the switching gears. Today we're gonna start a little bit is the keyword here, talking about page object model, and then probably next week we'll also talk about inheritance. All right, so kind of new concepts. Two reasons why you might need one and the other. Inheritance, you might need because you are one of those folks who doesn't want to always repeat the same code every time they want to create a new test. So one of the things we talked about is that when we write a test, chances are we probably want to log in, right? And even if we put it as part of setup, right? And we have, let's say we have 3 tests, right, inside our test case. And we put it inside a setup. The thing is, every time we create a new test case file, right, test case class, in a file, we'll have to create that setup bit. So that code will have to be copied, right? Everybody agrees? In fact, that's what we've been doing this whole time. We've been copying the template I gave you on the very first day and modifying it and going from there, right? Now, if you're doing it day in and day out, it becomes very annoying really fast. Wouldn't it be nice if instead of repeating this code over and over, we can just, I don't know, inherit it from somebody and not have to write it at all? We would just inherit from somebody and start writing the tests, and then, you know, the setup and the teardown will just kind of magically appear there out of the blue for us. That's why you need inheritance. But chances are we'll probably talk about it next week, all right? This week, let's talk about page object model. In page object model, we also sometimes use inheritance, or often use inheritance, because what we will find as we look through our website is that lots of pages have shared aspects, right? They share certain things in common. And instead of us having to repeat the same function over and over and over and over for every single different situation, we can create it as kind of a commonly owned behavior and then just inherit from that
class, right? And then all of our pages will have the same behavior. So far, so good? So to kind of start us down that line of thinking, I want us to take a look at 2 pages and try to figure out how we can convert them into an object, okay? A page object. Now, before we go there, what is a page object? Well, right now, when we started to create a test case, right, we would say driver dot, right, blah, blah, blah. And we say driver dot, blah, 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 right? So far, so good. All right. But then, after we did this for a while, we realized that certain lines of code can kind of be grouped into one specific step, right? Into one specific functionality, right? For example, login, right? We repeat it all the time, and we're doing it every single test. Can you think of something else that we kind of might, some functionality we might be repeating over and over? I'll give you an example. Let's look at, let's look at this guy and let's look at this guy. All right, 2 pages. Okay, see? You have your PIM. All right, do you see it? And then I'm going to open this link in new tab. So I know this is not enough space, but I'll do this so you guys can kind of compare them side by side.
Search, research, editing.
Do you see any similarities? Yeah, they're kind of quite similar, aren't they? All right. So forget about the fact that they're similar. We're only going to talk about PIM right now, for starters. All right. If you were to describe to me the actions you can perform on the PIM page, what would they be?
Search.
Okay, so on the PIM page, you can perform a search. Just one search? Okay, there are different flavors of search, right? All right, you can do by name, you can do by ID, so far and so forth, right? All right, flavors of search. What else? All right, you can reset your search. All right. I don't know, that kind of probably still falls under the search thing. So, reset, search. Right?
Can you edit?
All right, what else?
Add and delete.
Add the
You can add what?
records.
You can add an employee, right? Right? And then you can delete. Now those are pretty obvious, right? Self-obvious. All right, let's get towards the less obvious ones. What are some of the other things we can do on this page, on the PIM?
You can check off the box.
Yes, that's definitely less obvious. So you can select.
Sort.
You can select. You can sort. What else?
Maybe move tables.
Check.
I don't know if you can rearrange rows. I haven't tried, but if you can, cool. But I don't know.
You can link by link.
Resize.
Alright. You can click links, right? So you can click links in the table, right? Let's do this. We can click results. Click results.
There's a drop down for job title.
Input text and fields.
All right, now we're getting like more granular, right? But if we were, instead of getting more granular, try to get more abstract. Can we just divide all of these things into their kind of containers?
And paging.
So for example, selecting, clicking your results, and sorting can only happen within a table, right? So these things, they belong to a table container. All right. And then these things, right? They belong to a A form, right? A search form. All right, good. And then these guys, they're kind of there, hanging out. They belong to the page. They're page actions, right? Everybody agrees? All right. So that's good. We talked about PIM. Let's talk about admin. Is it same? Is it same?
No,
Exactly like you said.
No. You can perform a search, but flavors are a little bit different,
Yes.
right? Right? So you can still perform a search. I'm not gonna write it up because it's, well, maybe let's maybe I have a different marker. Let's compare and contrast with colors. Do I have a different color? Nope, just black. So yeah, sorry, you'll just have to use your imagination. So for admin, we can still search, but the flavors are a little bit different, right? And then for admin, we can still select, right? And click results, right? And we can sort. But it's a little bit different. It's not even like the selection is still pretty much the same, right? More or less. But what is different?
The columns.
The columns are different. The things we can click. Here we have options, right? But here we only have one, essentially, where we can click, right? But you know what's interesting here? It doesn't matter which one you click. They still all take you to the same place. So technically, it doesn't matter whether you click here or here. It's still the same. Okay, so far so good. What about this guy? Are these, what's happening here? They're like the same, right? They're not even like a flavor. They're just same, all right? So if you looked at these two pages and you tried to abstract them, you could immediately see how many things are so common, right? So literally, if you right now, I gave you a task, right? To implement functionalities of this page. And then I gave her a task to implement functionalities of that page. Chances are that if you guys compared notes, it'd be 95% same. So why bother have two people work on completely, like separate stuff, right? Wouldn't it make more sense to actually break it up instead of kind of by the different pages and functionality, right? I could say, well, no, this is a different functionality. This is a search by, for employees, right? And this one's the user. They're different searches. No, they're searches. And the action to search is the same. What is the action to search? Input, search, right? You can enter input differently, but more or less, you're just entering input, right? All right. Same with add. Same with selecting stuff. So if instead I said you work on the table bit, and you work on the the search form field, right? Then you guys could share, right? So you could create your little bit, and you could create your little bit, and then we would create pages, right? You would create your PIM page, you would create admin page, and admin page will utilize the table bit, and admin page will utilize the search bit, and this one will utilize. But they will pass in their own different flavors in, right? Sounds a little bit complex, right? And it is. That's why we're going to work little pieces at a time, and we're not going to be implementing everything, right? Because if this was our job, and we were paid for it, we would implement everything. But we're only learning, so we can implement a little bit of everything, so we get a little bit of a kind of feel for flavors. But we're not going to do like, oh, let's implement the whole thing and automate everything, all right? Deal? So far, so good. Now, that's all nice and good. These are very two similar pages. What about if I chose a page that was very different?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder. Maybe
Other than
there are pages.
Can you still find similarities? I can find at least one.
It's two elements.
Yeah. Hmm?
It's got two elements.
No. What's the similarity? The header. People still have a header. So if I go to this page and I want to assert that I'm on the right page, I would still need to be able to figure out what the page header is. So even these two completely different pages have a similarity, right? So the thing is, we will take kind of advantage of inheritance, and all of them will inherit from the very base, where it's just the header, right? What are some other things we might want to do? We might want to go to the page directly, right? Instead of us having to click on the multiple menus to get there, to make our test case a lot faster, we might want to go directly to the page, right? Because all of them have their own unique URLs. So if I know immediately how to go to that URL, I only have to test once how to get to it, that a user can. But after I ran that test to make sure that the user can get to that page, all the subsequent tests I write, they don't have to go the long route. They can go there directly, right? Because I've already tested that they can get there the long route. There's no reason for me to waste time in all my other tests, because that gets multiplied, the wasted time, right? So far, so good? So another thing, all of our pages, a behavior that all of our pages will have in common is what? Just to load. One behavior, just to load the page. And each one of the pages will know its own URL. So you'll be able to say, dashboard, load, and it will load. And you will say, PIM, load, and it will load. Right? Make sense? Okay. Yes?
I just have a question. Like in the normal scenario, in a web page, if you give a URL, you will not be able to go to that URL because of the security reason, right? So you have to log in and then go to that particular page. So how are we doing such cases in
You always will have to load, and then you can go directly to that page. I mean, I'm sorry, log in, and then go directly to that page.
Each time we are logging in and then going to that.
There is a workaround, technically. If you have a persistent cookie, like the kind you can, so I know some teams do it where they're testing internally. So they have a cookie that like is hard-coded, that's always acceptable. So you don't have to log in. You can just actually set a cookie and then you're immediately inside. If you want to go that route, it shaves off some time off of your logins. You don't have to wait for login page to load, and you don't have to like, field and submit and wait. But I'm not the biggest fan of it, I'm going to be honest. I would still recommend testing login separately then, in that case, at least once. But yeah, it is possible if you want to do it that way. 10 o'clock. I'm just trying to see what we're going to have enough time for. All right, let's try to create 2 pages, or at least start. Let's try to start to create 2 pages. A disclaimer though, just like last week, I don't know yet what your homework is going to be. It's probably going to be something to do with Webdriver weights, since that's what we were learning today. I want you to be able to practice using different weights. So like the difference between waiting for something to be visible and something to be present and something to change the attribute or something like that. I just have to come up with something interesting. So same like last week, tomorrow-ish, probably towards like more end of the day, nighttime, I'll sit down and I'll come up with a homework for you guys. All right? So please check back. If it doesn't make sense, because again, I'm only writing them the first time, so if you're reading it and you're like, I have no idea what it says, email me, I'll try to clarify. So yeah, you will have homework. I'm sorry, don't get excited. Just check back, like I said, tomorrow-ish, evening-ish. All right, let's start by creating the landing page, also known as a login page. All right, now the login page is actually special. It doesn't share much with the rest of the pages. It doesn't share much. Can you think of one thing it will have in common?
Login.
You'll still have to load it. You still have to load it. So that's what we're going to do. All right? So how do you create a page? We are going to create a new package. New package. All right, package. And we're going to call it, guess what? Pages. And then inside this new package, we are going to create new Java file. Where is it? No, we don't need JUnit. We need Java file. And it's not here.
Maybe just file and then
Class?
specify.
Java class?
Yeah. Java class. There you go.
Just class?
Yep, just a class.
First need to create the package, right?
Like it page.
Pages.
Java package.
And sure, let's start. Well, actually, let's start with the base page. That's what we're gonna call our very, very top level page. Gonna call it base page. Base page.
It's just draw.
We do not need a main.
Pages.
There's no. Oh. Well, we do need a constructor, but I don't necessarily have to start to create it from superclass. But let's do that. Sure, let's do that.
Where's your SRC?
And then just say finish. Anything that it doesn't put there, we'll create ourselves. All right. So we have pretty much empty new files, right? Some stuff on there, but it's pretty much empty. We talked about a page being able to load itself. You guys agree? All right. So, login page. What should it load? Which one? The base, what? The domain, right? Base domain? All right. In order to load the base domain, what do we need?
Open Firefox window.
Okay. Well, let's assume that's going to be done by actually our test. Our test will open stuff, right? And our test will create the driver. But what I'm saying is, if we're just talking directly to this page, this code by itself, what does it need in order to say get?
You type the URL.
So, in order for us to call the get method, what do we need? We need the driver. That's what I'm trying to get from you. We need the driver. All right? Now, here's the question. Again, I'm trying to make you give me the answer, right? So, follow my logic. You ready? If the test is the one creating the driver instance, the test, and I want my page to be able to load itself, how do I get the driver instance into my page? I have to somehow pass it in, right? Somehow. Usually there are two ways to pass stuff in, right? When we call a method, we pass it in as a parameter. Or when we create a new instance, we also pass it in as a parameter into the constructor. Good. So that means, what do we need to do to this constructor? We need to declare a driver parameter. All right, let's do that. Right? Agreed? Don't forget to import. All right, now here's the thing. It gets passed into the constructor. Do you think our page might have some other uses for this driver outside of the I can't talk, outside of the constructor? All right. So if we want to be able to use it from outside the constructor, what do we need to do to this parameter? Not return it. What do we need to do to it? By the way, constructors cannot return. What do we need to do to it? What?
Declare object from constructor.
We need to do what to it?
Class variable we can.
Yeah, we need to. I don't want you to say class variable. We need to save it, right? We need to save it. Now, the next question is into a class variable or an instance variable, and what is the difference? Can I just be like, today I feel like a class variable? Can I do that? Why not? Be spontaneous.
Why not? What's a class variable? Well, no. The class variable is not an object, first of all. It's a class variable, but what's a class variable? It belongs to the class. That means it's what? It's shared. It's shared. And if I'm going to be using base page to inherit from, it means that if it's a class variable, my driver, right, and I inherit from it, all my pages will inadvertently be sharing this one driver, right? And if something happens and gets corrupted in one page, it basically breaks it for everybody. Or if I decide that one page can use one driver and one page can use a different instance of a driver, right? I won't be able to do that anymore because, oops, it's shared by everybody. So that means in this case, class variable would not be a good idea, right? Would be bad. In this case, what would you want to do? An instance variable, right? How do I create an instance variable and how is it different than a class variable? Class variables are static, so as long as you don't put static, you're good, right? Just don't put static, and you're fine. All right, so let's do that. Right now, we don't know if it has to be public or private. So when in doubt, make it private. If you ever figure out that you need to be a little bit more lenient, you can always make it not so private. All right? But always start out with private, and then, work your way up. So private driver, I'm sorry, private Webdriver driver. All right? And then what do we do here inside the constructor?
This driver is called.
Very good. All right, this dot driver equals driver. Good. All right, excellent. All right, now we want to create a function called. I want to call it load, or even let's call it load. I don't know what sounds better, like login page dot load or login page dot load page. Load or load page? Login page dot page load. I like that too, actually. Don't laugh. I like it. I don't know. You guys make your own design choice. All right? You guys decide. But I'm gonna call it load. Public load. Now, what is my function? Okay, first public load, right? What is my function going to return? It's not a constructor anymore, so it has to have a return value. What is it going to return? Does it need to return a page object? So remember, our test is going to create an instance of the page, right? So really there's no reason for us to return it if we already created it and then we have it, right? So I think in this case, because we're just loading the page, we don't really need to return anything. If you, again, there's different approaches to things. I have an approach where my steps do not contain assertions. I keep my assertions and my steps separate. Does that make sense? So steps are just to get to places. The actual checking of things has to happen inside the test. My philosophy. Some people have different philosophies. Some people have separate steps that actually check things, and that's fine. If you're one of those philosophies, then you might return a Boolean. Like you might actually check that you're on the right page and then say, okay, true, or false, or whatever. If you're my philosophy, then I don't think it needs to return anything in this case. So if it doesn't return anything, then good job. You guys are in a roll today. All right, public void load, and then does anything need to go inside here? Okay, so where does this URL come from? So you said this will be URL? Okay, this is base page, right? And we're saying that all the pages are going to inherit this, all of them. And all of them, when you say load, will magically be able to load themselves. Each one a different URL.
String.
How?
String URL.
So they all have a different URL? Okay.
Where's that URL coming from? Why is it different?
Main root of
Each page has a different URL.
Because the base URL different
and then
each notepad.
So there must be a variable somewhere that can be changed. You guys agree? All right. Do you guys remember? It can't be private. Can it be private? Can it be a private variable? Can we change a private variable? We can't, right? Not from outside. But if we are a child, right? If we are a child, and we don't want the thing to be public, because we don't want other people from the test to change it. We just want the children to be able to change it. Yes. Right? See where I'm going with this? Good. So beyond private WebDriver driver, we also want to have a protected what? Page URL, I think is what we're going to call it. Right? And let's set a default. What should we make the default? I'm so sorry.
What type of page URL? String or what?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I always go backwards, but you can put string. Yes. I always put the value and then I think about what the value is and I add what it is. I have a weird way of working. But it is a string. So what kind of URL? What's URL? I'll give you a hint. Ta-da-da-da! All right. So far, so good?
Yes.
You guys, I just want you to kind of be aware, we're not going to be able to finish this today. We're just starting. It's going to be a big, big, big work in progress. So on that note, we only have 15 minutes left, all right? So don't get disappointed if we don't finish today, all right? Deal? Okay. All right, so we have our page URL. Let's finish our load. What does load do? Does load take any parameters? No, we're going to be able to set this value later, right? From our kids, from our children, we'll be able to set this this thing. What should load do? Driver dot get. Yep. All right. Look, we have our base page. Now, is it a completed base page? No, we might add something else later. Or we might decide that this is completed and we want another child between this guy and whatever the next page is going to be with more functionality. All right? So we might have something with a table and a search that both PIM and admin can inherit from, right? And then we might have something with a quick launch menu that dashboard can inherit from. And all of those other things will inherit from base page, right? So we'll have a hierarchy of things. All right, so far so good. Now let's create another page. So let's save this. By the way, I'm not perfect. If I make a mistake, I reserve the right to change things. All right, so we have our base page. Let's create another page. How do we create a new page? New class. What shall I call this? Let's call it login page. And we're going to say that we want to construct from superclass, just like before, abstract methods. And over here, where it says superclass, what are we going to put?
base page.
We're going to put base page. Base page.
That's the parent.
Super, yeah.
Base page.
So it's called subclassing, therefore everything that is sub from super.
So we need to type it.
If you just do browse and you search for base page, it will find it for you. When you say finish, this is what you get. It's super fancy. Extends means it inherits from. It means you get all the functionality and you're extending it further.
Oh,
Underline, it's okay.
this basically.
It's not letting me click this construction.
Our super is red, right?
Oh, no, no,
It's a
no.
reserved word, just like public or class.
Click the first one.
That's why it's red.
I'm-
Unless yours is actually red. Is it like
It's red.
not purple but actually
Oh,
red?
Yes,
Really?
yes, underscore red.
Type name is
Is it package?
Constructor,
Which means
Webdriver is
you have
undefined.
Ellie, I cannot
This
find
same.
this super class.
You guys, if you can't find it, ignore it. You can just add this little line yourself.
Okay, sure.
Extends base page. I mean, it's two words.
This any
Are you
Okay,
changing?
those of you with red, can I see who's gonna be my guinea pig? If it's red for you, is it fixed? It's red?
So you wanna run it?
Just горело.
Add a Webdriver like we did. Show me your base page. Oh, you didn't save it. You just save it. You guys, please save your pages. You didn't see me do it, but I actually always press Command F all the time. That's why for me it kind of works. So please save all your stuff continuously.
So that was your old one?
Could you please constructor base Webdriver is maybe
Oh, because yours have the same
maybe some error, right? Yeah. Can you just go back to base page down?
She needs to get the public void load part.
Okay, you know what, you guys? I think we'll probably pause on this over here, all right? I'm going to help the people who have still issues, and the next class we'll pick up from here, all right? Also, my voice is giving out, so if I have to yell anymore, I'm literally going to collapse.